Hi, everybody. This is Lynn Seraphin at TrentinoGenealogy.com. And today is the 22nd of May, 2024. And I'm making this short podcast today for you to talk to you about anagraphs in Trentino genealogy research. Now, you're going to have to bear with my voice. It's a little weak. I'm still coughing and slightly congested after having had the flu, but hopefully you'll be able to follow what I'm saying and also stop the recording if I get into a coughing fit so that you're not troubled by it. Anyway, anagraphs are something I get a lot of questions about. People want to know what they are, how to read them, where do you find them, who owns them, when did they start, things like that. First of all, I want to say another name for anagraphs are Stato delle anime, and at least that's the term used when they are kept in parishes, because stato means state and delle means of the, and anime means souls, so state of the souls. It's a very poetic way of saying the condition of the people who are living there, and it doesn't talk about their condition in terms of money and things like that, but it does look at many aspects of their lives. So anagraphs are interesting but limited in certain ways. So I'm making this video so that you can hopefully get a better understanding of what they are, and I'll show you several examples of anagraphs. Okay, so here is our first example of an anagraph or stato delle anime. This one comes from the parish of Santa Croce del Bleggio, which is in Val Giudicare, and it is actually the parish that my father came from, and in fact this top anagraph is for his family. Now I received this. This actually comes from a book of anagraphs that belongs to the parish, not the comune, not the village. So it's not a civil record; it's a church-held record. It is in digital format only because the one of the archivists in Trento happens to be a distant cousin of mine, and made a copy of this for me from the actual book, a long time ago, maybe 12, 15 years ago or something like that. So I've had this a long time, and it opened up a lot of doors. It showed things I didn't realize, but at the time, the things I know now, of course. So I want to zoom in so that you can see all the details and understand how it's read. Now, if you go up to the very top, for those who do or don't know Italian, cognome and nome means surname and name, and it says of d'ogni famiglia e individuo eventuale soprannome, which means of every family, an individual, and possible soprannome, which means nicknames or alternate names that they're known by, and also in case they also have soprannome of the family itself. In this case, my Serafini family, their soprannome is not, the family soprannome is not listed in this document, but I'll show you what it does say. So this actually, Serafini Pietro Luigi, is my grandfather. So he's my father's father. So it has the name Luigi underlined, and that's indicating that that is his personal soprannome. In other words, even though he was baptized Pietro Luigi, he's going to be known as Luigi. And he was. I didn't even know his name. His first name, his baptismal name was Pietro until, I got the actual documents. I always knew him as Luigi. Everybody called him Luigi. So it says Pietro Luigi di, which means of or son of or daughter of, depending on context, costante fedele, and it's inferred that the surname is Serafini, costante fedele Serafini, and actually he also was known as Fidele, not as Costante. And here's his mother, Parisi Domenica Europa. She actually had another name, Filomena, but she was known as Europa. And so it's underlined again. So in other words, this is my grandfather and the name of his two parents. If I move to the right, it says luogo di. Luogo means place of. So nascita means born. So where were any of these people born? What village or place were they born? Dimora means where do they live? So people moved around. Where did they live? Contrada is a village, but in this case, they don't have it listed. I'll get to the other page in a minute. So it shows my grandfather was born in Duvredo, and that's a little village in Bleggio, very tiny. But he lives in America, but it doesn't say where. And also, I don't know when this was exactly written because he moved around a bit. Now, here's what's interesting is it has, if you scroll down, it has actually all the information of the family group. And this is the key thing to remember about anagraphs. This is what makes them different from birth, marriage, and death records. An anagraph is a snapshot of a family group, and it keeps track of all the dates of the people born to this head of the family. So, in fact, if he were married, if my grandfather happened to have been married twice, say his first wife died and he married again, or vice versa, then if his first wife had died, and then he married my grandmother, whichever way, both wives would be listed, and any children from both marriages would be listed all in one place. Now, in this case, however, because they moved to America, it doesn't have all the information. Because my grandparents actually had 5 children, but these are the ones who were born in Duvredo. And you can see here, Duvredo, born in Duvredo, living in America. You can see the ditto marks there. And who are these 3 children? Well, this is my father's elder sister. This is my father. It says Romeo, excuse me, there I'm going, Romeo Fedele. That's what he was baptized. However, in the United States, he changed his name. Changed his name to Ralph, which is not nearly as romantic sounding as Romeo. But Romeo Fedele, it was his birth name. And then Pierina Anna was actually my aunt, who was known as Anne in the United States. And Luigia Maria was known as Jean in the United States. So these are their birth names, born into it. I'll get to my grandmother in a minute. And then if you scroll over to the right side, I will get to my grandmother's. I'm not ignoring her. It has this heading that says epoca, which means epoch, or you can just translate it as time period, or, dates, a range of dates. And it says della nascita, which means, again, I mentioned the word nascita means birth. So of the birth, date of the birth. And then I'll get to these in a minute. And then it says of matrimonio, which you can probably guess means of the marriage, and della morte, as you might guess, means and of the death. So if they know the birth, marriage, and death rate, not rate, but dates, they are all entered here. Now, he didn't put in the death dates because they died in America, and they don't know. He didn't know. It wasn't reported back. So it has my grandfather's birth date, my grandmother's birth date, their marriage date, which you can see is right before World War I, which was great. And then the 3 birth dates of my aunt, my father, and his sister, their younger sister. Now, if you look here, where it says annotations, annotazioni, I'll tell you what this means. It says to see Anagraph Volume 3, page 220, which means this is where you will find my grandfather's birth. So if you look in the anagraphs and go back to page 220, so it's obviously, this is page 221, so it's the previous page. And I don't think I have that page. It wasn't sent to me. It will show his father and his mother and all of the children in that family. So it'll show their family group. And then it'll go across the same way. With my grandmother, and it says see volume 3, page 116. So that shows my grandmother's father's birth date and this whole family group, the anagraph for that family. So now I'll show you my grandmother here. My grandmother's surname was Onorati, and it says Bono. I know it looks like an R, but it's not. It's a B. It's a cute little village. It has a beautiful little church with fantastic frescoes. Same parish, but on the other side of the parish. It's about a mile or so away. I don't know how far, but it's down the hill, and a bit of a long walk. Let's just say a short ride, long walk from Duvredo. So her name, it says Maria Onorati. She had a middle name Giuseppe, and here it says furono. Now, furono is an absolute past tense in Italian for the word to be. So it means in this case were. Fu would mean one person. Furono means more than one person. And because it's past tense, in context, what this means is the people I'm going to mention after this are both deceased as of writing this document. So I can tell you when this document was, but if I look up the birth dates, I believe they both died in the 1930s. I can't remember the dates off the top of my head, but it says Ambrogio. So that's my great-grandfather, my grandmother's father, Ambrogio Onorati, and Fiorina Rugolotto. Now, I do have their anagraph, and I'm going to show you some interesting things about that, because Rugolotto is not a Trentino name, because she wasn't from Trentino. She came from Verona, actually. So that's their anagraph. And if I were to go back a page, I would find the family group for the Serafini, the generation before. Okay, so this is the second example I want to show you. This is, if you remember, I said that my grandmother's family would be found on page 116. This is that family. These are the children of my grandmother's parents. So it's their family group. Okay, so it has all of their dates. Now you'll notice there's a lot more happening here. And the reason for this is that this family didn't migrate, and most of them stayed. Yes, I'd say the majority of them stayed in that area. They stayed in the parish. Of course, my grandmother migrated, her sister migrated, one of her brothers migrated, and another brother migrated. So, but an awful lot of them stayed. There are 11 children here. A few died I think only 2 died in infancy. But I just want to show you how much more information is here in this particular anagraph, because it's really, really useful. So now, hopefully you'll remember what the titles mean across the page, and I'm going to zoom in. So here's my great-grandfather, Ambrogio Onorati, and again there's that word furono, which means both of his parents are deceased. Furono Luigi e Gusmarotti Margherita. So his father's name was Luigi Onorati. It was actually something else, but he went by Luigi, and his mother's name was Margherita Gusmarotti. And it says, born in Bono, living in Bono. And moglie means wife in Italian. And again, there's this name Fiorina Rugolotto, and Fiorina was actually also the name of my father's youngest sister, and she was known as Flori in the United States, but Fiorina Rugolotto, again furono Antonio Rugolotto and Domenica Maranna. Now, here it says she came from a place called Badia Calavena in the province of Verona. Now, it's not very far from Trentino, but different enough, and it's actually a Cimbri community. And that kind of answered a lot of questions when I did some research, because my father had a vague recollection. He said to me once, I think I was told somewhere that there's a German grandmother or a German aunt, I think he actually said. Now, this is who he was thinking of, but he didn't remember her, because he came to the United States. He came to the United States at a very young age. She was still alive, so he knew her, but he came at too young an age to remember things clearly. Now, she, as I said, was Cimbri, which are Germanic. They're Germanic people who have lived in Trentino for like 1,000 years, but they did speak a German dialect called Cimbri. Cimbro, I think is they were Cimbri. So she was actually from just outside Trentino in this area of Verona. So that was very revealing when I saw that, although it is in other records, but I think this was the first time I found that information out. Now, if you look, here's all the children, all born in Bono, but then it says, where did they live? Well, this one moved to Marazzone because it's a female and she married. Speranza lived in Sesto because she's a female and she married, so she moved to uh, the husband's place. So all of these say where they were. Now it has Rustica Fausta. That's actually my aunt who went by the name Lena in the United States. It says she lived in New York. I don't know why it says New York there, but it doesn't say where my grandfather lived. But it says she lived in New York, and she did. She lived in that big diaspora. Excuse me, that big diaspora, Trentini diaspora, or Tyrolean, if you will, diaspora in Brooklyn. That's where she lived pretty much her whole life in the United States. But she hated the name Rustica, and she went by the name Lena. So now I'm going to scroll out I'm not going to go through all the dates, but I just want to show you all of the birth dates are listed. Oh, I didn't go through these columns. I'll show you what they mean now. All of the birth dates are listed. All of the marriage dates, if they are local, are listed. And even some that are after that 1923 cutoff date that we, because of privacy, it doesn't show them in the digital copies that we have. So you'll find them there. And death dates if they died in, in Bledsoe or in some cases, this one says in America. This person died in America. It doesn't say where. And in the annotations, it shows again, this is referring us to page 79, saying that that's where you're going to find the anagraph for Ambrogio's father. Now, before you start to think, oh, well, heck, this is going to take me back to the beginning and I don't even have to do any genealogy. I have to just look up anagraphs. Well, I'm going to tell you, they don't go very far back. Please don't get too excited about them. Like I say, they're very useful, very interesting, and very limited. They only go, they were really only started in the 19th century. So somewhere in the middle of the 19th century, sometimes some parishes later in the 19th century, sometimes they took gaps, sometimes they did them once and then didn't do them again for a really long time. So, it's kind of hit or miss. So you're not going to go further back than pretty much what you can do with Nati and Trentino. Maybe in some places you can a little bit, but not, you can't do an entire genealogy with these anagraphs. The other thing, unfortunately, if your particular parish, if it says that the parish records were destroyed because from World War I or World War II, these probably went with them. So there are some comune who take care of them. And these days, like I went to, what's the name of the place? Borgo Valsugana. I went to the registry office where they keep them there for the comune, but they were only 20th century files. Okay, so they were only recent. So I went, and I did want to try to find somebody in the 20th century there. That's why I went there. They won't show you them if they're possibly alive, but they can refer you to certain things. But if they're older, they're going to be in the church. So if they were destroyed, then they're probably gone. So there are some limitations, interesting as they are, and you probably want to have it if you can. And they are also not digitized anywhere. You have to go physically to the church, make a photograph of them yourself, or ask someone else to do it. In some cases, I got lucky, and I'll show you in a few minutes. I happened to be in Trento when the book of Anagraphs was in Trento for a particular parish, and I'll show you those in a minute. Anyway, so annotations, if it says, see the Anagraph volume 2, page 79, so it's looking at another book, and that's referring to his father. Of course, there's no reference for my great-grandmother, because she wasn't born in Trentino, in Bledsoe, or even in Trentino, but here are the others listed here. This one says that she died in Brescia because she became a nun. And as far as I remember, yes, I believe so. And I have a picture of her, I think, somewhere. And so this has all of the people that they married, if they're aware of them. Now let me go back to this one column here. I'm going to scroll in so you can hopefully see it. Cresima means confirmation date. And comunione, which, as you probably can figure out, means Holy Communion. So it's the date that they took Holy Communion and or confirmation. Now, I don't know exactly the situation in Trento, the Diocese of Trento, for over a long period of time, but I know that there were certain periods of time, like when I remember my mother telling me, she's Irish, but still she was Catholic, Roman Catholic. She was confirmed and received confirmation. She received First Holy Communion and confirmation at the same time when she was 9 years old, as opposed to when I grew up. We had communion at around age 7 and confirmation at around age 12. So sometimes when you're seeing communion here, it may also mean that it was confirmation as well. So these will have the dates when that happened. And sometimes you're going to see lots of children in the same family having a confirmation date, Cresima date, on the same day. And that's because the bishop would come to one place in the area, and the children would get, a whole group of children would get confirmed on the same day, because communion was done by the parish priest, but confirmation was done by the bishop of the diocese. So I think that gives you an idea of how to interpret this. I'm going to show you a couple of others so you can get another idea. Just a few more examples to show you some difference in styles, because they're not all uniform and they're not all exactly the same. I mentioned before that I was lucky enough to be in Trento when this big book of the status of the souls of the curate of Saone. Now that's the old Latin spelling for Saone, which is a small parish not far from Bleggio. It used to be part of it's a curate parish of Bleggio, but it really is a separate parish, and it's right on the Sarca River, and I know a lot of people have ancestors from there. I have ancestors from there as well. So I was able to look through the Stato delle Anime for Saone when this huge book, when I say huge, I mean, I'd say it's a good, I don't know, 2 feet tall, and, big book, on putting it on the desk. So I was able to take some photographs of it while I was there. And this is one of the photographs I took. I took dozens, so I'm just showing you this one as an example because it's kind of interesting. He has them organized according to surname, which I think most of them do, but you'll see instead of spread across 2 pages, it's all compressed into 1 page. And it has stipite, means the branch, the family groups, and so the first one, and this is the oldest branch in the book, and this is why I'm showing this to you. He is Bernardino, son of Taddeo and Elisabetta Marchiori, and these are of Saone. And so down below it has children, and it says on the side, all of these are the heads of surviving lines. So it doesn't show them if they're not. So then it takes the eldest son, this Taddeo, and if you go down here, it has his birth date, and now it says July 10th, 1787. This is as far back as you're going to go, because he doesn't trace it further back than that. So essentially, all of the children are children that you will find on Nati in Trentino. So just to give you an idea. So you get a date, his date. It doesn't have her date, but it has his date. So these are all dates of birth, Nashita, dates of birth. He doesn't have any marriage dates or matrimony dates, but he does have death dates for some of them. And then he does say, see page 2, married so-and-so, see page this, born, died unmarried, this one. Says so because he was 17, this person. So you can see it's a slightly different style, but you get the idea of what it is. This is a little bit less information than the other one because all the priests have a different style. If there's an X next to them, it means these people are deceased as of the time of writing this anagraph. So it gives you an idea when it was written, but not an exact date. anyway, I'm not going to show you all the ones that I did in Sauni because there are dozens of them, but I wanted to show you a different style so that you get that idea. I'm going to show you one other parish, which is actually not in Trentino, but in Brescia. So give me just a second to bring that up. Okay, so this is the last example I'm going to show you on this video, and then I'll summarize a few things for you so that you get an idea of how to approach all of this. This is a photograph of the left side of a book that I did. When I was researching when I went to Brescia, which is a province adjacent to Trentino, but it's actually in the region of Lombardia, so it's not Trento itself. I was researching for a client, and the only way to get hold of it was to physically go there and beg the priest to let me in. And he actually gave me the keys and said, just lock up when you're finished, which doesn't happen most of the time. Let me tell you that. Anyway, I had free reign and I took loads and loads and loads and loads of photographs. This is just one family group, and I'm just going to show it to you because it's interesting. This is not a printed page. You can see he's made his own columns, and of course at the top it says name and surname, paternal and maternal, and it says parents. So this is identifying the family group. Genitori means parents, so he's identifying the family group, and this is in the parish of Turano, and also Persone, the village of Persone. There's only about 3 surnames there. Well, not 3, but there's hardly any. And they just repeat, 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 and repeat. So understanding sopranomi there is really, really important. So he has his name and he has the name of the parents. He has the name of the wife and says she was from Armand and the name of her parents. Now, this is what's interesting here. It has a column for sopranome, and it says Austria. Now, that could be very confusing to you because you say, oh gosh, is this got to do with where they lived? No, that was actually a sopranome for this branch of the family. And because there are so few surnames in this tiny little, very rural, spread out place in Brescia, very kind of rugged area of Brescia, the sopranome were really super important because otherwise everybody seems to have the same name. It's only a handful, Grande, Pace, things like that. It's very same names over and over and over again. So the sopranome was super, super important. This priest, put profession. Now that's cool because I didn't see it in the other ones that I showed you. It says he was a carbonaio. Now, carbonaio is a charcoal maker. And what's interesting about carbonai is that they often had to do what they did. They couldn't actually live in the village most of the year. They lived out in the woods, and because they had to build these huts where they smoked the charcoal, the wood, to create charcoal for something like 7 months a year. So it was in the summer and spring, summer, and early autumn. They would be there instead of doing the fields. They were out there doing the charcoal. And then when the weather started turning colder, then they would come back into the village. So, and often often the children would get engaged in doing the work of the charcoal making. So this is interesting because this whole area is very rugged, and I can fully imagine that they could get to these wooded areas quite easily. It's a gorgeous part of northern Italy if you haven't been to Brescia. This is in a part of Brescia called Valvestino. And so this family, they were Carbonai. And so it has, loro means their, figli, their children. And so it lists all the children, and he has some notes here and there. It's a bit scribbly, not as neat as some of the others. And I'm going to go to the right side. Sorry if you hear my phone pinging in the background. This is the right side, and you'll notice he's handwritten nascita, matrimonio, morte, so birth, marriage, death, and he's written them in, and you could see there are different handwritings, obviously different people writing these in at different points in history or in time. And actually, if you scroll down, he has some notes here, very scribbly. But what this means, actually, if you kind of make it out, that is actually a C, and this means cresima. So he is notating the confirmation dates of these three children, and you'll notice they're all the same. And I mentioned to you before that you'll often see a whole group of children. Sometimes they're really young, and so that they're all confirmed on the same day because that happens to be when the bishop came to the area. And if it's a remote area, the bishop's not going to come that often. So maybe only every few years, certainly not every year. And so that's why all of these children were confirmed on the same day, even though some of them were probably pretty young at the time. So that's an example of a different style from Brescia. So at the beginning of this video, I said it was going to be short, and I lied, of course. It's actually more than half an hour long, but I hope that it's given you some useful information about anagraphs, which are also known as Stati delle anime. I wanted to summarize the key points that I covered here and also to kind of summarize your expectations about them. The first is, as I pointed out, they're called anagraphs or anagraphe when they're held by the comune or the municipality, and called Stato delle Anime or the state of souls when they're kept by the parish. Of course, I've heard the word anagraph used also in churches as well. They'll know what you're talking about. Now, in most parishes, they're going to start in the middle of the 19th century, so the mid 1800s. Some, as I've shown you, will start at the beginning of the 1800s with perhaps the head of the household born just at the end of the 1700s, but they're not going to really go further back than that. Some won't start until the latter part of the 1900s or the 1800s. It's actually really, really inconsistent. So from parish to parish, they differ. And as I also said, unfortunately, if some parish records have been destroyed from the wars, chances are that the anagraphs did too. Now, I want to also point out that communi, which are the municipalities, the civil governing bodies, are always changing boundaries, usually according to population growth or population decline. And so if you're looking in the for the civil registry office, they may not be where you think they are. One example is my father's parish of Santa Croce del Blegio. Well, the parish has been the same for, like a millennium. It's been there forever. But the community itself, Blegio used to be so big that there were actually two halves of it. Now part of it is they've combined it with most of the parish of Vigo Lomazzo, and it's under a comune called Comano Terme, which it didn't used to be. This is relatively recent in the last decade or so. The other example I can think of is the commune of Revon in Val d'Anon, which I know a lot of you have ancestors from. It is no longer a commune of its own. It's a parish. The parish has been there forever again, but the commune has then combined with a few other places, a few other commune like Brez, and they become Novella, a new commune. Now, the reason for this has to do with decline in rural populations. They can't afford anymore to have all these civil offices monitoring things, places where the population has gone down so far. So they've combined them into, a different umbrella, combined different rural parishes or rural commune into new ones to make them more cost effective. So that's why they're not always going to be where you think they are. Now, I know a lot of you are going to ask me this. No, 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 they're not digitized anywhere. These anagraphs and Stato delle Anime, they're not digitized anywhere. They have not been microfilmed by the Mormons. They are not online. No, and I'm really sorry to disappoint you that that's the situation. The only way you're going to find them is to see the books physically, go to the parishes physically, but there are some hitches to that. So I'm going to tell you, some commune, if you can't travel there yourself, some community will send you a summary of your family's, uh, that family group's statutory or anagraph of your family for a fee, and it'll be a transcribed summary. Those are the ones I've usually seen. I haven't personally ever seen a community send you a photograph of it. I've seen them send summaries. Some might send you a photograph, but I've seen an awful lot just send transcriptions. It's really for privacy reasons. They want to protect data and whatever, so they do not show these things to people generally. But again, it varies widely. You may get lucky, you may be able to actually have an actual copy of yours. And if so, these are obtained from the local registry office. Be aware, if these are municipal documents, they're not going to have all the little notes that the priests put in about communion and confirmation, and they may not even have the marriage dates of the children. They may or may not. So just be aware that that may be the situation. Now, if you go to the parish, some priests might, in big capital letters, might allow you to see the books for yourselves. However, my experience is most are very loath to do that for several reasons. They're worried that people are going to destroy the books accidentally, tear pages out that they want, which has happened. So they're very, very hesitant to let just anybody in there unless you come with somebody local or unless you get permission. Like in my case, for instance, I always, if I'm going to a parish and I don't know the parish priest, I always ask the diocese, the archivists at the diocese who know me, and they've known me a long time, if they could maybe write a letter of introduction, an email of introduction to say she's we know her, she's not going to wreck your books, she's a researcher, she's not just trying to grab some, steal something or anything like that. And she's very responsible. And that sometimes has allowed me to go see records in different places where they're not available to the public. So be aware that if you go to the parish, unless you're coming with somebody or somebody, it's not going to always work that they just let you see the books. And even once you're there, they may or may not allow you to photograph them. I got lucky in some situations. I got lucky when I went to Brescia. Also, I was allowed to photograph the Saone books when they came to Trento when I happened to be there. But there are some instances where they won't let you do that. For one example, there is actually an old tax census. It's not quite the same as an anagraph, but it's the closest thing to an anagraph we have in Revo from 1624. No, 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 you cannot photograph it. It is not allowed. When those books came to Trento, some of us were allowed to look at them. I took a lot of notes for them. I did a lot of transcriptions. The archivist gave us like 3 or 4 pages because we were researching one particular thing, but we were not allowed to photograph them in general. And if you go to Revo now, they will say, no, you can't even see them a lot of times. And even if you can, you certainly can't photograph them. So don't have high expectations everywhere. And again, you might get lucky, but some places, it's not going to happen. Okay, so that's it for me. I hope you got something out of this video. I hope you understand what anagraphs are, how to interpret them, what they will show you, what they will not show you, what to expect from them. They are very useful, especially if you're just getting started and you need to look up 19th century family groups. That's when they are the most useful because they don't go back that far. Then when you go further back before then, before the Napoleonic era, then you're going to absolutely have to dig into the parish records. And indeed, the parish records themselves will always tell you more than you're going to see in these anagraphs. So, hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got something out of it. I look forward to your comments. And as always, if you have questions, please leave them below this video if you're watching it on YouTube, or below the article if you're watching it online, or in our Facebook group, or anywhere else. Just reach out to me and leave a comment, ask a question. I'm here. Take care. Ciao.